Go ahead.
Hi, good morning. Welcome to the Thurston County Board of County Commissioners work session for Wednesday, January 11th, 2023, 9:08 a.m. My name is Ty Menser, Vice Chair of the Board. We have our Chair, Commissioner Mejia, by Zoom, and Commissioner Edwards will be joining us hopefully in a moment. We've been having technical issue. For public virtual attendance, you may follow along on the Thurston County YouTube channel. The subject this morning is our EDC ADO annual recap, and we got folks from the EDC, including Director Michael Cade and his team, so I'm just gonna give it right to you, Michael.
Great, thank you. And thanks for the opportunity to meet with you folks this morning. Actually, I'm gonna turn over to our board president, Mark Steepy, to introduce the organization, introduce the leadership role that we have, construct our organization. I think it's important that we kind of ground that conversation on how we make decisions and how we strategically identify a work plan that is a benefit to the community of Thurston County, but also as an adherence to the ADO designation that you bestow upon us. So, Mark, and also before Mark starts, I'm sorry, I do want to introduce, I think you all have met Heidi McCutcheon. She's our Director of Operations. I would encourage all of you to think about, if you cannot get a hold of me, please get a hold of Heidi. And she is part and parcel with how we're moving forward. She joined our team a couple of months ago and has absolutely hit the ground running and has not missed a beat of how we do things. I'll ask her to introduce herself in just a minute. But Mark?
Okay, well, thank you for having us. We do enjoy these work sessions to introduce what we do at a high level and answer specific questions that you may have. Our board, which is, 25 people strong, is made up of people from both the public and private sector. And we are very committed to not just Thurston County, but the larger region that we belong to. You know, having sat in on the expo, which was in late November, early December, which was attended by Pacific, Grays, Mason, and Lewis County economic folks and businesses. It was super rewarding to hear again how much the Thurston EDC contributes to those other organizations and what they think of Michael and his team and what we do. So it was a great reminder of what we have to offer this entire region, and we do look at this from a region. You know, we've gone through a lot of changes over the last few years. I mean, we had to do an amazing shift in how we operate when COVID hit, and Michael and his team did a wonderful job in doing that. And then at the same time that was going on, Thurston County, Olympia, Lacey, Tumwater have all brought in their own economic development personnel to focus on what those jurisdictions want. And that is something that is very, very welcomed by what the EDC organization does. And we've had to shift in no longer taking on some of the responsibilities that you now take on and find ways to support that. And so we have made that shift, and it's something we want to continue to have those conversations and dialogue on how we can better support all the local agencies. And Michael, I think you meet with all these individuals on a monthly basis.
We do.
So, and then, you know, lastly, I think bringing Heidi on was a tremendous find for us. I think she brings a completely new perspective and set of ideas that is, again, welcomed by Michael and his team and our entire board. And so we're gonna continue to morph into whatever this region needs. And our leadership group is 110% committed to everything that we can do to help Thurston County and the local agencies within the region that we're supporting, so.
Good. Heidi, do you want to introduce yourself real quick and kind of your background?
Good morning, I'm Heidi McCutcheon. I am the Director of Operations with the Thurston EDC. My background in the early 2000s, I spent much time in real estate here in Thurston County, working for a couple of title companies and then going out on my own as a real estate agent in 2008, which was a terrible idea. In 2010, I became the president and CEO of the Mason Chamber, where I served for the past 12 years. During that tenure, I had the chance to attend some of the things that the Thurston EDC had been doing. I have much respect for Michael and the things that his team have accomplished and watching them grow over the last decade, and some of the things which truly are astounding that their organization has been able to accomplish. And so When a friend of mine pointed out that they were hiring for a director of operations, at first I was like, no, I'm happy where I'm at. And then as I started looking at it and realizing the role that I could play in becoming part of this groundbreaking team, I'm happy to be there now. So Monday was my 3-month anniversary.
Congratulations.
And they've been very welcoming, and it's exciting to become part of the team and really work towards some fantastic things, so.
Thank you. I would be remiss in not thanking and recognizing Jenica. The role that you've played with us has allowed our region to move forward very, very well. Heading into the pandemic and then coming out of the pandemic and during it, I just can't imagine what we would have done without her work and her leadership, so I want to thank you for that. Mark was very astute in identifying that our organization's changed, and the role of economic development has changed. I don't know who's operating the presentation. You can go to page, we're gonna skip over this, you have my presentation, but for time and for brevity's sake, I'm gonna go to page 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and go to page 6. Structure of the organization, the ADO designation. I'm gonna start there and we'll kind of talk about that. Mark, in his opening comments, talked about how organizations changed.
Commissioner was gonna join us via phone. Good morning, sir.
Yes.
Okay, can you, yeah,
Frustration,
sorry about that. So we already started the briefing, but I'll put you on the speaker. Can you hear me okay?
That's fine. And I've got all the paperwork and everything.
Okay, perfect. You want to speak just to make sure if he catches you? Yeah, go ahead.
Sound check.
Oh, sound check. Good morning, Commissioner Edwards.
Good morning, sir. Good morning. Sorry about that.
You got me off my banner.
Sorry.
Threw me off my
Okay, go ahead.
stool. That's good. And thank you for Commissioner Edwards as well as a member of our board of directors. And it's good to have him there and his, as always, sage input. When I showed up at the organization in 2004, recognize that was the year that you redesignated us as the ADO, the Associate Development Organization. And I didn't really, my background, I kind of knew what that was all about. So I dug into the RCWs and 43.330080, kind of what does that mean? Realized that revised code of Washington identifies that the ADO of Thurston County needs to do about 25 different things, and I think we were doing 2 at that time. And key to that was the notion that we represent all of Thurston County, different segments and different sectors of the community's economy, but also builds partnerships, and that the cornerstone of economic development is the partnerships that we do. We set upon a course at that point in time that we will not do anything if we can't have partners. We will go alone if we have to, but the best way for community and economic development is partnerships. And then when you hired and created this position that Jenica sits in, that was just another cornerstone of that partnership and the relationship. It's critical to how we do work. If you look at the RCW, and I've listed some of those out there on that page, is identifies we need to create partnerships and leverage tools with everybody from the community colleges, and we sit on the technical advisory boards of several of their programs, to the community, to the chambers of commerce, the visitors convention bureaus, the everything from K through 20, as well as different interest groups such as Association of Washington Business, et cetera, et cetera. We have 54 different partnerships that we've created since 2004 that we maintain. We either sit on a task force, lead a board of director, or we also lead in a technical advisory capacity as well. So we take that very, very seriously. Every year, our team in the spring identifies the ADO relationship that we have, and can we check that box? And I'm very confident that we can check every box of the ADO that we do. How we got there is, if you want to go to the next page, and you will not be able to see, go to that matrix that you cannot read, all those things. We did this exercise, it's an asset map of Thurston County's economy and economic development system. We did this asset map in the late 2010s, as we were thinking about creating that relationship that is now known as the Center for Business Innovation. If you look on the top axis, you'll see everything from resume building for individuals seeking employment to international trade. Those are the activities that are identified in the RCWs. And if you look down the other axis coming down, you'll see all the organizations in Thurston County that does this work. We have partnerships with every one of those organizations that are listed in there. And this is a little bit dated, but the lesson here is that we wanted to identify who's doing what in the ecosystem and create the entrepreneurial network that we have wanted to build with the Center for Business Innovation. So this gave us an idea of who's doing what, where are they doing it, and are they serious about it? And is there a metric and a deliverable about it? So if you read the key, that the dots of the square is an organization that has a budget for it, and they do that work. Because what we're hearing is that, oh, we do that work. Do you? Do you actually do that work, or do you refer to it and you want to do it? Well, we kind of refer to it and we kind of want to do that work. We don't have a budget for it. So an open dot is the referrals. And the open dot is the spirit is willing, but the budget is weak. And then if you go to the next slide, so that gave us an idea of what our ecosystem looks like. And if you go to the next slide, we looked at everything from where are those holes. So if you kind of look at where there's gaps, that's where we play the hardest, not the hardest, but that's where we were strategically identifying, creating a work program to fill those gaps. My goal isn't to have every one of those dots, every one of those squares in the matrix full, but the notion that we can align ourselves with other organizations, we don't have to get out of our lane. We can avoid redundancies so that we're using resources that are adequate and they're also not going to waste. Every dollar that comes into the organization we track, and every dollar has a return on the investment. And I'll talk about that in just a minute. But that's what this matrix has allowed us to do. When we set up the Center for Business Innovation, and keep in mind the Economic Development Council is a 501c4, and underneath that, we've layered the 501c Center for Business Innovation. Part and parcel, and sometimes I get nervous that I kind of identify that. I want you to think about the Economic Development Council as a network, as an entrepreneurial ecosystem that identifies. We really don't identify how the CB&I, Center for Business Innovation, and EDC are different other than a budget. And that's Mark's job and Heidi's job to make sure that our budget is correct and we're fulfilling that. And it's also Mark's job and his leadership role to make sure that the system is moving forward. So it's a little bit kind of art form more than science, but we have to pay attention to where the redundancies are, who our partners are, and what the deliverables. If you go to the next slide. So the brand, this is some of the things that we are known for and what we've done in this last couple of years from that. When we moved into the Center for Business Innovation, the physical structure, we identified that we actually have a number of programs that are local, hyper-local, and then they're regional, and then they're actually statewide. We actually run several programs that are statewide. The Procurement Technical Assistance Center, which is being rebranded through the Department of Defense as APEX.
Accelerators.
APEX Accelerators, thank you. I'm not gonna get that right. I've been saying PTAC since I started in economic development in 1990.
What is that?
Huh?
What is that?
So it's a program that works with businesses to help them gain government contracts. So anything from transportation and infrastructure to manufacturing, but teaching them how to bid on successfully those contracts with the.
For federal funded contracts or overall
State.
contracts? State and every, okay.
Really effective program. And, it's interesting for me because when I started at the Snohomish County Economic Development, they had just received that contract, that cooperative agreement with the Department of Defense. That was the first year. I think overall they did about $300,000 in contracts in the state. Last 2 years, we did over $1 billion in the state. The program is very effective. It not only does federal contracts, but it does federal, state, local, and special purpose districts. We have the technical assistance. We have a team of 8 on the PTAC side, Procurement Technical Assistance Center, to work with businesses. And they, Ty, Commissioner, you come in and you say, yeah, I make cases for these. Somewhere in the federal, state, local procurement system is purchasing these cases. We want to make sure that you have every opportunity and capacity to not only bid successfully in that, but also get paid. And so therein lies the business retention and business expansion strategy around it. We took that program on when it was floundering 10 years ago. It was just and we've turned it into one of the most successful in the country. We were at the bottom end of that 50 states. Every state has one or two. New York has two, I think California has three. We were at the bottom quartile for performance and return on, we're at the top 5 in the country now for return on investment, $1 billion. And it's not necessarily just JBLM work. Tiffany Scroggs is the director of that, and it's fantastic. So,
Hey, Michael, you have a bullet on there, it says we're the largest standalone EDC in the state. Will you define largest?
Yeah.
What does that mean?
yeah, so that means that we have the highest concentration of technical assistance, but it also means the highest, largest budget for an economic development organization in Washington State. That is a standalone. Some of the EDCs were organized as a Chamber of Commerce and a Business Convention Bureau and the EDC, and they collectively do that work. But we are just one, regardless of how we do it. So we counted in not only FTEs, but we also counted in budget and then also counted in terms of technical assistance. So if you come in and say, I'm thinking about starting a business, that's a pet a pooch, you wanna go home and on the way home, I wanna pet a pooch and reduce some stress, we can figure that out for you. We can do that market analysis for you and help you start that.
What is the number of FTEs that you have in 2023 in your budget? Just curious.
We have 30 FTEs in our payroll this year. And when we started in 2004, started on this kind of strategic motion, we had 1.5. So I don't want you to think, well, we're overweight. But every time we add an FTE, it's attached to a funding stream and it's attached to a deliverable.
I think it makes sense too to point out that the number of businesses that have been positively impacted by the programs that this EDC does is amazing. When I was telling my physical therapist that I was taking a position there, he said, you know, when I opened my office, I had my medical degree, I knew everything. He's like, they taught me how to run my business and I wouldn't have been as successful without that. So, you know, just people on the street,
great.
business owners, it's very far reaching.
For time, I'm gonna skip ahead to the next slide there. But will give you an idea of the brand. This is our ecosystem, and this is just a graphical representation. You'll see the Center for Business Innovation up in the corner. Rings of Saturn surround us with our programs and our technical assistance and also the outreach programs. The idea here is a little bit confusing, is that we don't want somebody to come into our doors and say, I need to go to the Washington Center for Women in Business. What's your business? How can we help you? How can we serve you? It's not a no wrong door approach, it's just show up. And one of the things that we learned during the pandemic, especially as our interests and our efforts started to expand around BIPOC and serving individuals that have not participated in this type of system. We need to now push this ecosystem out into the community, and we've done a fantastic job. We've served over 10,000 businesses last year, and that's just kind of ridiculous. So Mark asked the question and defined how we are. Nobody else has served those metrics in Washington State. I'm very proud to say you have an economic development organization that is, and I'm not saying anything disparaging about anybody else, is the most hyper-effective, impactful economic development group in the state. I'm very proud of it. I'm proud of the team, proud of the leadership. They do phenomenal work. They set the pace, they set the budget, they allow us those tools to do that, and we deliver. If you want to go to the next slide. So this is something that the board beseeched us a couple years ago, and we'll get back to doing more and more of this as we kind of come together as an organization and starting meeting face to face. Is this is how we organize ourselves to make sure that we're doing the right things to ensure that we're outreaching and hearing and in creating programs that are a benefit to all individuals in the community. So this is the metrics that we strain our programs through as we create programs. One of the things that we do is make sure that it's financially feasible. Our finance committee actually acts as that safeguard to ensure that I just don't come to Mark and say, you know what, we're gonna create this new popcorn business and it's gonna be really cool. And he's gonna say, okay, I trust you, but it runs through our finance committee to make sure that it's gonna be a benefit to the network and the ecosystem we create, but also that it also is strained to make sure that it's of value to the businesses of Thurston County. You go to the next slide. So this is where I'm gonna stop a little bit, and this is kind of the return as the ADO. Think in terms of your investment in the organization straight straight cash is $50,000. And so how we return those dollars to the organization or to the community is pretty significant. In the last 2-year period during the designation, we did $374 million of direct economic impact to our local economy. And so if you think about that, total jobs and employment is 1,500, a little over 1,500, and we count these for our clients. And then return on investment for every dollar you invest in the organization, or not you, but is invested in the organization, we return about $15.50 back to the economy. And so if you talk about return on investment, we want to make sure that it's at least a dollar goes to 10. But we 2 years ago was 25, and last year was about 14. So it's just under, it's about 14. So so a return on investment is dollar in equals $15 in the local economy. And then you start thinking about in terms of the human side. I never like to talk about economic development without notion of the individuals and families and people that we serve. Economic development is about growing the economy, and I'll be very, language we use sometimes is a little bit, it's like, how can they say that? We build wealth. We build wealth. How that wealth is used sometimes is not necessarily just the dollars you have in your bank account and the dollars you have in your pocket, but it's the ability that you all have to create a quality community. Roads, bridges, library systems, schools, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So if you look back to the ADO designation in the RCW, every one of those partnerships is there. If you kind of pull it out and say, what is its relationship to economic development? It builds wealth, and it builds families, and it builds a strong network that you all can rely upon and call upon and put to use. As you develop your internal plans, put us to work. You know, create that partnership. I'm not the smartest guy in the room. I'm the sleepy guy in the corner, but put us to work. I'm smart enough to figure out we got a tool, and we've got a resource, and we got a network that's very impactful. This is how I think we can do it, and then let's talk about it. I'm pretty much done.
You're not the sleepy guy in the room.
No,
Let's be honest.
I'm not buying
Office
that.
at 7 o'clock, fast asleep by 7:30. So let's finish that up and I'll open up for questions.
I say we open it up for questions. I think that was great, unless Heidi has anything to say. No?
Commissioner Edwards? I know you sit on the board, maybe you have less than the rest of us, but do you
Yeah,
got?
I really don't have any questions. Another good presentation there by Michael, but the one question I do have, always tried to maintain an economic relationship with China, and that's kind of soured, now. I'm just wondering, do we still have basic contact and comes back to some type of normalcy?
Great question. We started that process about 2005. We've actually had fairly quietly a number of trade missions back and forth. We've hosted delegations here. We actually opened up an office in Shanghai that said Thurston County on it. It was closed by the Chinese government 5 years ago. I don't know, 5 years, 4 years ago, through the federal issues. I still have a network that I reach out to through I still have a network with the private sector in China. The network that we created with the cities is quiet, and I would classify it as quiet. I wouldn't say it's gone away, but we've spent enough time, communities of Xi'an, Dantu, and Guangzhou, having a relationship with those communities. So they know us, so when we go back, and we'll go back, it's just not yet. But we do have that network there, Commissioner Edwards. It's just quiet right now. The private sector responds to me, and I make sure that I touch base at least 4 times a year through WeChat or in email. And so we do have that, but it's very quiet. And I don't anticipate we'll be heading back to China anytime soon. So we do have a building network in West Africa.
Another thing, I think that was Heidi that was talking about the medical clinic or something, was that right?
Yes, physical therapy.
Yeah, the physical therapy clinic. I just think that's a great example of showing kind of a hands-on impact that we've had on our local economy. Nothing like talking about something, you know, that you had interaction with somebody that benefited from it, just even without solicitation. So, no, good presentation. Sorry I got there a little bit late, but I think I've been through this before and have a pretty good understanding of everything you're doing, and you guys keep up the good work. And I don't know, maybe we'll see you for lunch at the chamber today.
Yeah, I'll be there. I'll be there for the desserts.
Commissioner Mejia, I don't know if you're hearing us, this moment, I know you had. There she is.
Yes, I can hear you fine. No,
No
I
questions?
don't have any questions.
Okay,
Sorry.
very good.
It's okay.
All right, I just, a couple random questions. On that last slide, when you say $374 million total economic output, can you remind me, I know you probably told me in the past, but kind of how that's, what are you adding into that? What does that encompass?
Yeah. So it encompasses the three basic, if you cut our work down, if you boil our work down to, it's recruitment of investment in dollars into Thurston County, new businesses. Don't necessarily need to move your business here, but we want you to do business here. We got great organizations here to do business with. So that's the recruitment, and then the retention of businesses. So how do we work with business to retain their operations? And our one goal is to keep them in their facility. We do that through a procurement technical assistance program, that's why we took it on. And also the work that we do for the Center for Business. And then the last thing is expand. Commissioner Edwards' question about how do we expand market. I don't go to China because I want to get cool stuff and stuff to populate my house with. I want to go to China and find those different markets for our businesses, and we represent them. So we add up all that activity on that, and then we start at the end of the year. We kind of categorize it. Gene Angel is our research person. He categorizes all these things. Is it a job retained, or is it a job investment, or is it capital expenditure? We do add that up and we track it, and then so we come up with a number. One of the biggest things that went into this was the retention of the Crown Cork and Seal building. That was a 3-year case for us. It was nice that, a lot of times we don't get the credit for that. It was nice when they had their ribbon cutting. We were kind of invited there, but the role that we play is I want to stand proudly in front of the flag of Thurston County, but I also want to stand proudly behind the businesses that are operating and cutting that ribbon. And so people kind of forget, it was a 3-year effort for us for that very significant bit of retention. We brought in the state, we brought in the regulatory agencies, we coordinated the workforce, so they expanded, 50 employees. That was a big deal 2 years ago. It was a big deal for us. It also represented manufacturing Thurston. You can't manufacture here. That's how we come up with those numbers.
Thank you. The other question I had was, I was curious about, I'll get to you, this matrix, really interesting, and it's hard to read, so I'm
It is
gonna
hard
ask
to
you.
read, yeah.
So if I understood you right, across the top are tasks that the law says the ADO has to perform, or what is this list of tasks?
It's germane to the ADO identification, and what we've done is we've extrapolated that.
Okay, you
What does
kinda-
it mean to be a business retention? It's
You've broken, and, okay, because I see there's like bigger headings and then they're broken down. And it looks like a lot of the gaps, so to speak, are kind of in these last two areas. And can you tell me what those say, like the green and the blue, just so I have a sense of, I just can't read it. I'm in my reading glasses. Like
I should have brought that. So the green is market expansion and development.
Yeah.
So there you'd find procurement technical assistance. You'd find also the work that we do at the Center for Business Innovation for research. We have a pretty significant, so if you want to find out what the market size is, we can do that for you. The blue there is international trade. And that's really where we identified that we wanted to make sure that, and that's why we picked China on our own, to tell you the truth. I don't want to go get in line. Everybody goes to we don't have aerospace, and everybody goes to the Paris Air Show. Every economic development goes, that's fine, it's kind of cool, I'd love to go to Paris. I don't want to go and get in line to sell something I don't have. So that's why we go to China on our own, and we created that network. That's what that's all about. And then the dark blue, that is the entrepreneurial network development. That's where we spend a lot of our time on the Center for Business Innovation.
Okay, and then, so I understand on this axis, types of organizations, and you're hoping that, cause like you were like, let's just take this green area where you, in your slide with the arrow, like, okay, here's a gap. So you'd like to have work being done for each type of organization within each of the activity sectors?
I really don't care about the organization, to tell you the truth.
Yeah.
I mean, I care about them. I wanna make sure that inside here, there's like a big gap here. Is this where we need to spend our time? So when I come to the board, I say, you know what, we identified that this area here is a lapse in resources. Can we fill it? Do we need to fill it? And then the work program that we present to the board in discussion is that, yeah, we can fill it, and it's important because there'll be a return on investment, and we'll build that. So I wanted to find out who's doing this work and if they're really doing it. And you know, stepped on a lot of toes when we created this. I mean, I was called on the carpet for organizations that, you know what, stay out of Marlene. That's what I wanna do. But I wanna be supportive of it, and I wanna make sure that we're doing work that is supportive of the work that you do. That's how we leverage resources. You think about Thurston Strong, geez Louise, when we started thinking about it, it's just, you know, cash support and grant support. We also leveraged 9 other programs into Thurston County because of Thurston Strong. So the dollars that you created through Jenica's tutelage and your tutelage and your guidance, we actually were able to go to Commerce and say, because we're doing this work, I think you should be able to do this, and we were able to do it. That's what this matrix will give me, is the ability to talk about the resources and the activities that are going on. If we go after a grant, if we go after a contract of service, if it's, you know, already filled, then why do it? Mark's gonna say, no, okay, nope, we're already doing that work, somebody's already doing the work, it's just, you're just chasing work to chase work. So that's where the matrix come in. It's a really powerful tool. Actually, I've recommended that Commerce require it of every economic development council in the state to do it. Because you have to know the environment that you're dealing with, and you have to know the leadership that is there. You can actually do this on your board level. We've kind of started doing that with the board, is that, you know, board members, what do they represent, who they represent? Because on the board structure, we're one of the few organizations in Thurston County that is required, public and private. That's where our bylaws say. But where do they represent? Is it geographical? Is it sector driven? Is it demographic? Great question. Thank you.
A quick question, couple of questions. You know, the Port of Olympia just signed a lease to bring Coca-Cola, I believe. Were you involved in bringing that business? If you feel free to, you know, I think that's important to maybe highlight to the public the role that you play in bringing this big, really asset to the county.
Yeah, so my case file on that goes back to last spring. And so we were contacted by a site location person in the private sector seeking the location of a large facility that had a variety of different special requirements. Through our relationships in the community, we found the most appropriate person to respond. It wasn't me. They were really looking for land on that point in time, and so the port took that on and took the lead. Our role really at that point in time was to make sure that Swire, Coca-Cola, had every resource available to them to make a business decision. Every time I met with Swire, it was about how does this community deliver a product for them, and the product being workforce, location, infrastructure, and not only that, a community environment where they're welcome to do the work that they need to do. So our work with them, the port is the lead on that, and this is great economic development, is that sometimes we're the lead and sometimes we're the supporting agent. In this case, we're the supporting agent for that. So it started with a contact that got driven over to the port because they could respond to it on a land basis. We provided the backdrop of the work that they do, the work that we do for workforce, also the delivery of kind of the economic development system. They had a lot of questions about, hey, we have a strong philanthropy network ethic in our business. Are we gonna be able to do that? Yeah. You know, the decision-making metrics that businesses go through is different for each one. And so we have to find out what their decision-making metrics is, and then we speak to that. If we can't fill that metric for them, we make sure that there's partners in the community.
And I think that that's pretty telling in terms of the role that you play in terms of facilitating in a partnership approach. And I think that's really the core of your business in a way. So the other question that I have is, what is exciting you at this point in 2023? What is coming that you're saying, wow, let's embrace this opportunity?
You want me to go first?
Yeah.
Sure.
Because I think we all have
How
similar.
much time do we got? So before I answer your question, I do wanna say one thing, 'cause I don't wanna forget it, which is, our organization historically has never done a very good job of tooting our horn. That's not who Michael is, right? And Heidi and I talked about this when we were talking about Heidi coming and joining our organization, that we need to do a little bit more of that. I'll be honest, Commissioner Mesner, when I look up there and I see $374 million of economic output, what the heck does that mean? How do you calculate that? What have we done? And to your question, what is that, were we involved in the Coca-Cola project? We need to help tell those stories and find a way to do that, so, and do it in layman's terms so that the public can see what we're doing. What do we bring into the community? Cause we run into this, seems like more and more, explain to me how you get there. So we need to do a better job of telling that story, and that's a target of ours for what we are gonna start in 2023. My company, so I'm an owner of a 1,400 person engineering firm, one of many owners. We're up and down the West Coast. The majority of our offices are located in major metropolitan areas, and people are leaving major metropolitan areas. The last couple of years, with a lot more people working remote, there being a lot of, I will just say, political issues in some of the major metropolitan areas, and people want to get out. And because you can now work remote, people are taking advantage of that. Thurston County is in a prime position to take advantage of that, being between Seattle and Portland. We've already seen it, we're gonna see more of it. And so I think that's a tremendous opportunity for this region to capture, and it's, we're not going to, in my opinion, I don't think we're gonna see a mass influx in businesses where we're gonna need a bunch of office space. There's an opportunity for industrial space, I think. There's gonna be a huge opportunity for residential and housing, and then what comes along with that, all of the added infrastructure you're getting,
Support.
restaurants, shopping, places for people to visit, parks, all that stuff, right? And we don't spend a lot of time talking about that part of the social part of economic development, but I think it's a huge opportunity for Thurston County. We have so much to offer. I mean, 70% of Thurston County's waterfront on the salt water is controlled by government entities, and we have a wonderful opportunity to make that an amenity to this region. And so that's where I'm at with 2023. And then I mentioned Heidi too. I just think that she's gonna bring so many new ideas to what we wanna do, and I think the three of us are gonna have some really fun conversations that are gonna start taking us all over the place, and they're all gonna be good places.
Excellent.
Ag Park, Entrepreneurial Network, Art Systems, and the emergence of a variety of different sectors that are just nascent right now, but we can see them bubbling. And that
So when phase one is gonna be completed?
Sorry?
The phase one of the ag park.
Phase one.
When will phase one be completed? Yes.
Phase one, so contracting this quarter, building construction, so we hope that this time next year that building, the first building will be up and operating.
So you have all the funds necessary to carry the construction?
We have all the funds committed for that. We do have a private investor that ideally, if we're able to find additional funding so that we don't have to utilize those private funds and can put those other places in the project, that's the best outcome. But we have just over $8 million that we've raised so far. I'm sure you guys know that, coming in with the $500,000 grant, which has allowed us to break ground, start with the foundation and the design, and then the goal is, as Michael said, that by the end of this year, we should have two buildings on one parcel and hopefully a second, third building on the adjacent parcel, and working towards the development and building of the third lot
Oh,
as well.
wonderful.
So, speaking to a little of what you talked about, I certainly can't speak for the board or indicate their interest, but one of the things that government can do, one of the few things government can do is infrastructure. Roads, sidewalks, lighting, that type of thing, as you know, I'm sure. And I'm wondering if you see an opportunity for the county to invest in infrastructure in any particular area that would support economic development. You know, we can't do housing, but we can do parks and the infrastructure for amenities. So as we look ahead, we'll be building the budget for the next biennium. What should we keep in mind in the economic development area of the budget as we develop that this coming year?
You wanna take a shot at that one?
Technology, right? Technology is gonna continue to change, and most communities are behind where they should be as far as providing that level of technology. And it's, you know, specific to cyber, you know, and getting high-speed internet out to everywhere. We're not going backwards, right? We're gonna go
We're not.
forwards, and look at what the Nisqually tribe is doing, right, with their cyber network and wanting to expand that, and we need to continue to do that as a community. It was probably 20 years ago that the city of Tacoma made a commitment to getting a cyber network established in the city, well before it was available to use. But they did it, they committed to it, and they were one of the first cities in
Large
Washington
cities,
to
yeah.
really have that network, and that's what we need to be thinking about. I know that there's some agencies that really wanna push transit, you know, to get people moving around. I think we're a long ways away before Thurston County residents will behave that way. That's my personal opinion. So I think we can continue to look at our roadway infrastructure and improve areas, improve circulation. There's a lot that can be done from an infrastructure standpoint. I think talking to the developers that wanna come and work in this community too are also a great resource, because they're tasked with creating as low income housing as possible, but codes and regulations make that very, very difficult. And I just like, because I'm a civil engineer and I do a lot of this, I mean, frontage improvements are a massive cost to what the developers need to do. There's a lot of benefit to doing that. But then as you start driving around, you have all these gaps where you've got this area where you may have enough room and there's pavement, curb, gutter, sidewalk for a 4-lane roadway section, but it's still only 2 lanes because on either side of it, you still have just a 2-lane road. There's opportunities if we can find the funding to fill in those gaps and improve that circulation. That would be looked at very favorably by the development community, and I think we'd see less pushback from them for, why am I building this when it's just gonna sit here unused, right?
And that's a good perspective. And you know, and you know the county is partnered with Nisqually Tribe.
Yep.
And as well as Pierce County to bring this broadband at a regional level. And going back to infrastructure, we're building what I believe a successful partnership, the roundabout out in the Grand Mountain area. And that by itself has took us almost 3 years, you know, with the Kaufman brothers and the Hills Tribe and everybody else. But I think it's a good example as to how we can probably look into the future to build this partnership, to build that infrastructure. Because the development is not there. I think that putting that footprint and resolving that intersection, that is gonna help an incredibly economic development driver in that area. So I think we have to be inventive as to, you know, how the government can partner with the local developers and look into the future. And putting aside a little bit of, you know, the caps that we wear, and perhaps the objectives that we have individually, and put into the middle as to how we can probably build those infrastructure pieces. So, yeah.
Used to be the jingo of economic development was land, labor, and capital. 20 years ago, if you would ask the question, my boss would have said, it's land, labor, and capital. That's infrastructure. Now it's technology, infrastructure, and information. And so how do we leverage each one of those to make sure that investment is being driven into Thurston County that stays here? We don't want it to come in and ping out of here, right? We don't come in and go. We want it to be sticky. And if you can focus on that infrastructure piece, you become a sticky community where investment comes and it stays and it starts to circulate and it's a cool thing. It used to be land, labor, and capital. It's not that way anymore. That's not economic development anymore. It's information technology, and capital. So,
What's the term you like to use on occasion? Big, hairy, audacious goal or
Yeah.
something?
BHAG,
Yeah.
big, hairy, audacious goals.
Right, so we talk about that all the time within our organization, about what is it this community really, really wants? And I'm gonna use a horrible example, but I think it's a great discussion to help kind of explain the idea. Let's just assume for a second that our region is supportive of having an international airport. Okay, that's gonna take 30 years from now to get done. There's a lot that can be done right now to get that to a place where it could be functional faster rather than later, right? And as a region, that's something that we're all gonna have to get involved with to make happen. I'm not saying that's the big hairy audacious goal, cause I don't think it is, but there probably is something like that, our entire region can be, that's large and
Right.
significant, that we can all get behind. And having these conversations, and because the EDC is so involved with all of the organizations, and everybody does it to different levels and with different focuses, we can find out what that or those things are and
Right.
work towards them. And so, going back to what Michael said at the very beginning, the relationships, building the relationships and having an understanding of what everybody wants and how do we get everybody together to make that happen
Vision,
is
right,
what
so we're all
we all continue to do
contributing.
very well, I think.
Related to the airport, you probably read the article in the Olympian this morning, so
I have not.
I encourage you to do so.
Well, I will just tell you, I live within the 6 mile circle,
Yeah,
so.
so there's a good perspective. I myself testified in front of the House Transportation Committee on Monday, so you can read how that went.
Okay.
Jenica, anything?
No questions. I just want to extend my gratitude for Michael, his leadership, and the role that BoCC plays. They've been our strongest partner in a time where it's been really difficult. So I just want to highlight that partnership and leadership, and it's been amazing to work with.
Thank you. Likewise, absolutely likewise. Thank you. I was gonna say something when I left this.
Yeah.
That's a good place to leave it.
Yeah, drop the mic
You
and
made him bashful now.
I think the last thing I would say is, besides the thank you for that, was the notion that when we started this, I guess I really consider my time blessed to be the executive director of this organization. Started in 2004. We're a little bit nervous that we couldn't have. Can you imagine? I can't imagine having this conversation about it, the airport, without an organization, the platform that we have now, back then, because we would have nothing to fall back on. Your designation as the ADO has allowed us to continue to grow that platform. And we will continue to grow that network. And we're not satisfied today. We will continue to move forward. We had our board retreat, some students come in. And the thing that took me by surprise of what do they want in this community was the notion is that our responsibility is to solve tomorrow's problems, to allow them to solve tomorrow's problems. Let's don't create a problem for them that they can't solve. So that's how I look at the ADO designation. So you will receive a letter from Commerce probably in 2-3 weeks. It says it's time for you to redesignate your ADO.
The renewal. Mhm.
I am eternally grateful that you will consider us with that honor to be your ADO.
all right,
All right.
thank you, very good, appreciate it, and with that, we're adjourned.
All right,
Thank you
for
very
your
much.
time.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you.